Hi, this is Brendan Davis from Bedrock Games and the Bedrock blog, and I'm here with Adam Balderstone for another episode of Bedrock and Balderstone. And we are talking about the last two episodes of Doctor Who, Season 11. This is episode, 8, It Takes You Away, and, episode 9, right? It Takes You Away, and episode 10, The Battle of Ranskoor Av Kolos. I gotta say right out of the gate, I'm really not digging that name. That name kind of... It just rubbed me the wrong way when I saw it, and I had a similar reaction to a lot of the names they use this season. But overall, I think we had up until this point a pretty positive reaction to the season, wouldn't you say, Adam?
Yeah, on the whole, I think it was a pretty solid season up to here. I mean, in the last episode we reviewed Witchfinders, I think. I actually still think was the highlight. It was the highlight up to that point, but I think it is the highlight of the season.
No, I would agree. That was the highlight, and What's-His-Face's mom's story was another highlight for me. The guy whose mother dropped him when he jumped out of the tree. His name escapes me at the moment.
That was a highlight. Yeah.
But yeah, no, we went on about that episode last episode, so I won't continue to do so. But that definitely remains the highlight for me.
Okay.
But it's a good highlight. So I guess we should get into It Takes You Away, which is a really... How do you describe this one? This one is like it's like a really atmospheric, very well shot, moody episode. Where did it take place? Norway? Was it Norway where the setting was?
Yeah, it was in Norway.
It felt very, very Norwegian.
It did feel Norwegian.
But then it ends with an intelligent cosmos assuming the form of a frog and speaking to the Doctor. So it's a very... I did not expect it to end there. And I'm not doing a good job of explaining the plot, but if you're listening, you've seen it. So, I know that people don't tune in to find out what happened. What did you think of this episode, Adam?
Man, this, I mean, just your description shows, it's a hard one to kind of wrap your head around to an extent. It was, I don't know, it was an okay episode. I feel like it could have been better somehow. I mean, I don't know. It dragged a lot in the middle. I think the setup at first was kind of intriguing. What's going on? Then I feel like a lot of the cave stuff. They spend a lot of time in those caves between our universe and the other universe, and I think that was the cliche Doctor Who wasting time running up and down hallways, and then it quickly brought the real story with the other the being that was essentially another universe. Out kind of a little too late, I think. I think they would have been better getting to that sooner and focusing more on that.
I liked the core concept. The core concept of a sentient universe. What was it? The Solitract? Was that that?
Yeah.
That was really cool, and that felt like proper sort of science fiction-y type stuff that I like to see in Doctor Who. I really liked the Norwegian setting. I thought that looked beautiful. I thought they did a good job with it. I thought that they, everything down to the dad with the Slayer T-shirt, which maybe was a little bit heavy-handed, but I don't know. As an American, I was like, hey, that feels right. I liked all those details. It's when they got into the cave, I tend to agree, and I'll tell you why it went south for me. Normally, I'd actually be kind of cool with where they were going because it almost had like a Midian-like feel to it. Do you know what I mean? Like the Clive Barker Midian. But Ribbons just felt way off. Something about Ribbons felt like... Remember the time that the Master was... I forget what the character's name was, but when they were on that really long ship...
Oh, yes.
It was a character like that where it's like, ooh, this is going to be somebody else. This isn't like a real character. This is like a disguise. Because this guy doesn't feel like a real person. He feels too made up or weird or something. But it just turned out he was some weirdo that lived in this buffer zone universe. I liked the flesh moths; those were cool.
Those were a nice effect, definitely.
But Ribbons just really turned me off. Like Ribbons did not work for me, and then when they got to the end where the Doctor was talking to the frog, hold on, let me get to my note because I list off like the things that I liked about the episode, and then kind of said I don't really know how I feel. It's visually great, interesting location. Ryan calls Graham granddad, which I thought was kind of a neat sort of character development.
Yeah, that was. I think I felt like that paid off well.
But that frog, that just so did not work, especially when they like. I really like the theme of the season. The theme of the season seems to be grace. Do you know what I mean? And it's funny because in Christianity, grace is this really weird concept that it does. I think a lot of people use the word grace, but they don't really understand what it means. Do you know what I mean? It has a very specific meaning, and I think that they applied it well over the course of the season. It's this, and to have this sentient universe speaking in the voice of grace would have been great for that reason, except for the fact that it's a goddamn frog, and the doctor is having this conversation with it. Like, I mean, I have my hats off to Jodie Whittaker. She really she
handled her side.
Well, she was fully committed to being the doctor, talking to the frog that is the embodiment of this sentient universe. But then every time they pan over to the frog and it's Grace's voice speaking through the frog, you're like, this is just fucking ridiculous. It's just and I don't normally swear that much on this podcast, but it was really a weird choice. It just didn't work.
No. I mean, they wanted to go with something really surreal, but it just kind of came off as silly. And I feel like, I feel like there's sometimes that this show gets the emotional beats wrong. Because I mean, it's this lonely being that was desperately trying to bring people into, to connect with, since it was shut outside of the universe and alone. And I don't know. I mean, I just felt like they didn't really pull off the pathos there.
No, I don't think so. And again, I think because like by the end of the next episode, it's pretty clear to me that grace is the theme of this season. Like, grace is a strong theme through the season, and I don't know. You have this really big concept of sort of the redemptive and freely given love of God is what grace is, right? Like that's sort of the concept there, and it's embodied by this ridiculous frog, and again, I know that they're using it symbolically. It's not like it's not like a Christian themed season or anything, but that seems to be the thing that Graham specifically is experiencing over the course of this season. And I don't know, the frog just deflates all of the. You're right. It's the wrong emotional beat. It deflates all the emotion that scene should have had. Do you know what I mean? That could have been a really powerful scene. I think part of the reason why it didn't work is they made it about the Doctor and Grace rather than making it about Graham and Grace. Do you know what I mean? Yeah,
I've got a similar comment on the next episode, but it's more ambiguous. But I feel, because for one thing with the show, I think they've struggled a bit because I really like the main cast. Even in the mediocre episodes this season, I think the main cast is very strong, but it also means that they've got 4 main characters that have to eat up a lot of screen time. Yeah. And I feel like it's making it harder for them to land anything that relates to any other character on the show. I feel like everything else is kind of getting short thrift.
Though I will say Ryan and Graham are connected enough by Grace that their stories can easily line up.
That's kind of my point. I feel like Ryan and Graham's stories was really strong across this season, and I also feel like over this episode and the next episode, just to skip ahead a little bit, I feel like Jodie Whittaker really gets a chance to play the Doctor really well. They really give her good stuff to work with for the most part in these 2 episodes. And I don't think she ever was doing a bad job. I just felt particularly that she was really getting a chance to shine in those 2.
No, I have no complaint about her performance, and I think she did a really good job in this episode and then in the next one, and I think that they've successfully done the thing they needed to do this season, which is they wanted to have a female doctor, and they needed to show that could work, and I feel like they did it pretty effectively. And I feel like she was the right choice. I don't think. I mean, I'm sure other actresses could have done it, but she was a very solid choice. Now that I've seen her portray the Doctor over the course of the season, and I think now she's in a good position to sort of develop her version of the Doctor even further. So I think everything that she's done has been great. But and again, I didn't hate the episode. I thought it was an interesting episode. I didn't hate it. I don't know. It just was weird. But I just felt like it didn't quite do what it was trying to do. There were a few. The frog is where it all went south. I think Ribbons was bad but forgivable. Like Ribbons, there have been things like Ribbons in Doctor Who before, and it doesn't destroy the episode.
No,
it's just there might have been better things they could have done. But
that kind of goes to my point that I feel like a lot of the episodes have been too busy in some extent. It's like by having that whole Ribbons thing, which really doesn't. He's not really significant to the plot. He's just kind of this obstacle they encounter on the way to the plot, and the whole Ribbons thing takes up a lot of time, and I felt like maybe they could have made that ending land better if they just not gone on this detour for a while.
Yeah, no, because it definitely is a weird juxtaposition. Like that cave place just felt really different from everything else going on in the episode. You almost don't need it. Do you know what I mean? Like, why do you need I guess they needed it to that was sort of the clue that they had to unravel. But
yeah, they didn't need to spend as much time on it.
It could have been a hallway. It didn't have to be a cave. It could have been,
exactly.
But I feel like again, I think the frog undermined everything. I also think the whole there was something weird about having the frog, and I keep saying the frog, but like this sentient universe wanting to be friends with the Doctor. Do you know what I mean? Like that was like that's kind of what that scene played out as, and it just didn't work. It didn't work. It didn't
work as a solution. We can be friends and not be together. It's like, well, that doesn't. It didn't feel like an adequate solution to the problem. I mean, oh, good, I've got a friend I will never see again. Okay, good.
I have a theory of why this episode was the way it was and why it didn't work. I think that they were. I think that whoever wrote this episode, I don't have the information in front of me, so let's see if I can find that. Who was the writer? Because I don't want to. So it was Ed Heim, or Ed Heimey. I don't know what the pronunciation is, but it was directed by Jamie Childs, and I feel like somebody was inspired by Stranger Things, and that the cave was kind of like the Upside Down. Do you know what I mean? Like it felt like a lot of what was going on, and then you had a mirror universe. Do you know what I'm saying?
It felt very. The cave did kind of remind me of like some of weirder like Stephen King short stories and things. I can't remember the name of it. Mrs. Todd's Shortcut or something like that, where there's this woman who keeps taking these weirder and weirder shortcuts through reality. But
Stranger Things is very Stephen King inspired. So
that's what I'm saying. Yeah. I'm kind of agreeing with your point because I was thinking of Stephen King. So you bring up Stranger Things. We're pretty much on the same page.
The reason I bring that up is because friendship is such a big theme in Stranger Things, and when you have like 8, I don't know how old are they, like 10 or 11. I don't know how old they're supposed to be in that show, but they're kids. And when you have kids saying friends don't lie, it works because the kids saying it. But when you have the Doctor sort of giving a lesson on friendship, it just doesn't work.
Here, you've made me realize what's wrong with that scene is that they wanted to end it with, okay, this creature is trying to kind of trick people and lure them in, but ultimately it kind of makes this realization and it lets them go. But they had the Doctor explain it rather than having the creature figure it out. Yeah. And it's like it needed it. Basically, they put the spotlight on the Doctor. It's just, hey, you know what? Blah. Let me tell you a bunch of stuff about friendship. And it's like, oh, okay. And it's like, no, you needed to do it the other way. That if there needed to be this creature understanding friendship and understanding, okay, I've got to let you go because I care about you. But there was never a point where, it learned to care about the Doctor. That didn't actually happen. The Doctor just talked about friendship.
Yeah.
Which it's talking instead of showing, basically.
Yeah. And I think in this instance you're probably right. This is a better moment for showing than like just kind of like having the Doctor break it down bit by bit.
Yeah, exactly. And explain friendship.
But also I just thought the speech it just felt, I don't know, like a little too just a little bit simple. Do you know what I mean? Just like an over.
Well, it is. That's exactly my point, though. It's this really simple. Oh, well, this is how friends should act. And oh, okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And
again, if it's 10-year-olds saying it, it sort of rings true. But if it's like an adult saying it or a Time Lord saying it, it just doesn't. I expect the Doctor to have a little bit of a more sophisticated take on friendship. Do you know what I mean? Like that was my problem with it. That was my I thought the Doctor should have some deeper insight than that. Do you know?
Well, once again, I don't think there's any insight that would have done it. It's supposed. I mean, it needs to be an emotional thing. They needed to have the Doctor and this creature become friends, and then that to be the reason that let it go. But that didn't happen. They just gave a lecture on friendship.
Well, that was another issue with it, actually, is that the Doctor instantly becomes friends with this frog. Do you know what I mean? Like one moment, Graham is the one who's sort of dealing with Grace and all this, right?
Yes.
And then it's the Doctor after she convinces the thing that I forget the Norwegian character's name, but when the father gets sent back because she's like, look, I know more about the universe, stick with me. It pivoted too much right into that relationship that I had no care for at all because I was so focused on Graham's situation with Grace and the other guy's situation with his dead wife that it felt...
No, you're right.
It felt really weird to suddenly have the Doctor kind of hogging the affection of this universe. Yeah,
because... No, you're right, because the tell that, like, early on, the first tell you get there's something wrong with this Grace is when she doesn't care that Ryan is trapped in the cave.
Yeah.
It's like this being not caring about other people is its weakness that gives it away. And so Graham being the first one, I mean, he doesn't quite pick up on it, but he gets the first inkling of it. He should have been the one that ultimately made this creature care. And then, once it cares, it has to let everyone go. But yeah, like I said, the Doctor jumping in. This is actually my. But once again, we'll get into this again in the next episode because I feel like the same problem happened there too.
Well,
in the opposite direction.
Why don't we get into the Battle of Ranskoor av Kolos?
Okay.
Which again, I do not know who is picking these names, but they. The name again, and it's a minor criticism because overall I've liked the season, but something about the names they've been picking that are meant to be like science fiction-y names, I just feel like they're just a little bit off somehow. They just feel like a little too. It's almost like when like me and Adam both play RPGs and stuff like that, so we were accustomed to making names, and you can tell
it's
when
hard.
What was that?
And it is hard.
It is hard. But you can tell when somebody's very lazily coming up with a name, and it's like the first name that leaps in their mind. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've even had a few of those get into some of my books, and people have mentioned it to me, and I've been like, yeah, that was a pretty crappy name that I picked there. This feels like one of those kind of names to me. Like, it just kind of... Go ahead.
Going with it takes you away too. Soul Attract. I was like, is that an exercise machine? That's just it sounds. The amazing Soul Attract. You'll burn 15 pounds a day. It's fantastic.
Yeah, that was, but that was at least for me. That was within the bounds of Doctor Who made up technical jargon. Whereas
I know.
This is
it's probably worse than it was making me think of Nordic Track. We were in Norway, so it like made it even worse.
I wonder if that was deliberate. You have to wonder if they were
either that or it was just a weird mental thing. thing where they come up with names and don't realize it. Like, I mean, just as an aside, when we reviewed Babylon 5, and an aside on that, with the names on that, there's a ship called the Alexander, and it's Captain Haig is the captain of the ship, and of course Alexander Haig was in the Reagan administration, and everyone on the internet at the time was like, whoa, what kind of a message is he sending? What's he saying? And Straczynski was just like, whoa, I didn't even realize that when I wrote the episode. It just one of those things your brain makes a connection you don't even notice. So yeah, it could be deliberate. It could be an Alexander Haig situation.
I think that happens an awful lot, those kind of Alexander Haig situations. Yeah. But in this episode, now I have to say, I found this episode a little bit confusing, and again, these are more like reaction discussions, so I didn't feel the need to like really clarify it or go back and rewatch. But I thought that the episode was kind of confusing. I also this episode reintroduces Tim Shaw, and I think I said the same exact thing when we watched the first Tim Shaw episode, which is I cannot hear anything that guy says. Like, and again, my hearing is not as good as Adam's. I have some ongoing hearing issues over the last couple of years.
It's a little tricky to make out what he says.
I missed a lot of crucial plot points because of that guy's stupid voice. And I also just found some of the plot details confusing. But I don't think that those ruined the episode for me, because it was the kind of episode where I got the general thrust of what was going on. I knew that there was a super weapon that needed to be stopped, that it was targeting the Earth, and that the core sort of internal character conflict going on was that Graham was deciding whether he was going to get revenge against Tim Shaw or not, and the Doctor was trying to persuade him not to. And there was this other thing going on with the Ooks, which were these people who, after Tim Shaw had been banished by the Doctor, he ends up on this planet, and these Ooks people who
can do anything. They've just got fantastic. They're two people that can just do anything in the universe with magic.
They have some kind of mind power that allows them through faith to create things. Is that or is it just energy?
Move planets and put them in a little box and whatever.
I don't understand, but again, it's not stuff we haven't really seen before. Like, we've seen stuff like this.
I mean, if the plot tied together a little better, I would have been fine with it.
But yeah. So that's I guess that's the overall episode. I don't know if we missed any important details. There's also the Paltroxy character, or what's his name? Paltrocky.
Paltrocky, I think. Yeah, I mean, I feel like he ended up kind of like a third wheel. It's like he shows up at the beginning, and you're like, "Ooh, who's this character?" And then I don't know. I mean, he shows up a couple times and shoots some robots, but it's just like I felt like everything felt a little undercooked.
He was the exposition, that guy. He was the guy.
Yeah, he was exposition, but I don't know that he delivered any of the meaningful exposition. It's like he talked about the battle, but it's like, what did the battle have to do with anything? I mean, the battle didn't ultimately matter.
Well, one of the weird things about this episode is basically he's what's going on is Tim Shaw is using these two Ooks to empower his super weapon that he's going to use to destroy the Earth, and the Doctor basically stops them by using really high-tech Prozac, as far as I could tell. Right, like it's a neural blocker or something like that. It's like some kind of, it was interesting, but I don't know. I don't know. What did you think of the episode? Let's start with you, because that's how we normally do this.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I felt like it set up the whole thing with the battle that had happened and Paltrocky, and then suddenly we shift to Tim Shaw being there, and it's like, I have to admit, they first showed Tim Shaw on the screen with his helmet on and everything. I'd totally forgotten by now what Tim Shaw looked like.
Yeah.
I was just like, there's this ominous music, and everyone's like, oh! And it's like, Tim Shaw wasn't that, he was kind of like a chumpy villain that they had for the pilot, because they were concentrating on introducing the Doctor, and he just got dispatched in 5 minutes. And I mean, I realize he's important because he did kill Grace indirectly, but but and I felt like that moment where we're supposed to be like, whoa, Tim Shaw's back, whoa. The music was telling me to feel that way, but no, I didn't. And
Yeah, and I didn't find him that interesting. I found his. I thought he would have been a lot more interesting if he had redeemed himself over these.
That
years.
would have been more interesting. Yeah.
But then he just kind of doubled down and became a god, and like not a god, but like a sort of a god because of these Ux people. I liked the part of the story that was about Graham. I thought that all worked, and again, I liked the overall theme that they were going for here. And it is interesting that they kind of tied it, both this episode and the previous one. There's kind of like a false religion type thing going on with the grace thing.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting, but I think I share a lot of your reactions to this episode. It wasn't bad. It was entertaining, but I think you're right. I think the core villain of the episode is forgettable. He's not.
Yeah.
He's not. I had the same exact reaction. They were like, I know that voice, and I was like, I think I'm supposed to know that voice, but I don't. And it wasn't until they said Tim Shaw that I even realized that that's who we were talking about.
And it's no. And I feel like Tim Shaw was part of two separate plots. They were only able to use him in ones because the plot all revolves around the fact that he tricked the Ux into thinking he was a god. But aside from that one moment where, the woman takes the doctor in to see Tim Shaw, and they have like a 30-second exchange, we never see the Ux and Tim Shaw interact. Yeah. And the whole episode pivots on the doctor trying to, get the Ux to realize they were tricked. Yeah. But there's no payoff to it. It's like they never see Tim Shaw. There's no... I feel like for that to pay off, there had to be some interaction between the Ux and Tim Shaw.
Oh, I agree 100%.
It was just flat. Once again, it's a similar thing to the frog. It's like instead of the Ux dealing with Tim Shaw, the doctor steps in and the Ux just talk to the doctor, and there's not any emotional component. I mean, when they realize they're betrayed, Tim Shaw isn't there to react to. It just, I don't know. It isn't constructed quite right, I don't think.
No, I agree with that. I feel like the moment when Tim Shaw showed up and they kind of skipped time, they should have given us a little bit more because it was really unclear. Like, it was just too unclear exactly what was going on when initially they got there. And I know they wanted that, but like I feel like a flashback sequence at the right time could have kind of helped cement some of the motivations. Also, I know that they made a point of not bringing back old villains or monsters from prior Doctor Who. Yeah. But this episode and the previous episode is when I realized that that's really kind of a weakness of the season, because I feel like especially in the previous episode, that might have been a good time. Like I was almost expecting a reveal of some kind. You know what I mean? Like, that's why I was talking about the Ribbons character being like, I thought he was going to be a disguise, and then I was like, oh wait, no, they said they're not going to bring these things back, so maybe it's just this guy Ribbons who's not really that interesting. I know that you don't want to do the thing where the Cybermen are attacking every other week, or the Daleks are coming back every other week, but there's a lot of other monsters and villains and plot threads that they could draw on to connect it to previous Who episodes and give it a little bit of an emotional weight that you just can't get from one season alone. Do you know what I mean?
I think something Moffat was good at was he would sometimes bring recurring, villains back in a secondary role, like, the Daleks show up for a scene or something. They're not. Yeah. It's not an episode about defeating the Daleks. They exist in this universe, or and I think it could have used that somewhere, just something just to connect this a little bit to the previous scenes.
Well, the Tim Shaw character, like, again, there's no way that they could have had us invested emotionally into. The only character in the season that would have gotten an emotional reaction from me in that moment was King James. And he would have been completely the wrong character.
Yeah, that would have been really weird.
Yeah.
I'm a god!
Yeah.
Yes.
But he's the only one that's had that, like,
actually.
resonance with me. Do you know what I mean?
But, yeah.
And so, because you don't get, not because it's a bad season, but because you don't get characters like that much in any show over the course of a single season. And so that's why it's really helpful to be able to draw on the series canon. And so that instead of having this, I mean, Tim Shaw, he's not a good villain. He's just not. He's a Predator knockoff. Do you know what I mean? And we only saw him once, so we don't have any real connection to him. And
well, it's the other thing too. It's like he's kind of this chump who, I don't know. I think most of his technology was ruined, and he shows up, and there's these two beings with amazing, crazy powers, and they're like, "Whoa, you must be a god!" And it's like, wait a second, they're the ones who got these infinite. He's just like some dude in this little armor costume. It's like, how are they impressed with this guy? How did he pull this scam off? That's It just, I don't know. I found that really weird.
Yeah, I also found the overall look and feel of the episode a little bit too cinematic in some ways. I know that overall they've been cinematic this season, but I kind of wanted. What was the episode? Because there every once in a while we get episodes that are like the battle of whatever, and I know there was one with Matt Smith that was the battle. Oh God, what was it? Battle of Demons Run? Is that the one I'm thinking of?
Yeah.
I really was longing for like a Battle of Demons Run style episode this time around, because this just was too serious. Do you know what I mean? It was just a little too serious, and there wasn't enough levity.
I think actually, I mean, on and off. I mean, I feel like the Doctor got a lot of good moments in this episode, even though I don't think the episode paid them off, but I felt like she was in pretty full out goofy but entertaining
mode. No, she was. I'll grant you that. But the tone didn't change. Do you know what I mean? The tone of the episode, in the battles of Demons Run, the tone of the episode shifted with Matt Smith's kookiness. Do you know what I'm saying? And this felt like it didn't. It felt like, no, she's still in like a dour science fiction movie where everybody's gonna die. Do you know what I mean? That. And so she was like a break from the tension, but it wasn't like I don't know. I just feel that over maybe it was because the two episodes back to back were so serious. I think the show really could use some lightening up next season. If I was to have like a chief complaint, I think lightening things up a little bit, because I know Chibnall did Torchwood, and Torchwood is obviously very serious. But Torchwood is a show you watch and you get sick to your stomach. Do you know what I mean? Like, you watch it and you feel uncomfortable after. You feel like uneasy about the world because of the subject matter. That's not what Doctor Who's about. Doctor Who it can go there, like they went there with Peter Capaldi. Do you know what I mean? They had like a darker version of the Doctor, but it still had these breakthrough moments of,
Yeah, well, Capaldi was very funny in the role, and
she's funny too.
What? She is funny. Yeah, I know. I was going to qualify that. I mean, I'm not saying she isn't, but it's. I don't know. I mean, I feel like a lot of the episodes were very predictable too. You were just waiting, like with the previous episode. It takes you away. It's just like, I felt like once we got to the part where we had the fake universe, the people, you're just waiting for people. There's like about 10 minutes where they're all fake, and you're just watching the characters go through the motions of the plot beats of needing to figure it out. And it's like, that isn't interesting. And I feel like a lot of these episodes had those scenes where you're just waiting. You know what's going to happen next, and you're waiting.
But that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. I think what I'm talking about is not just tone, but pacing. Because again, when I go back to Battles of Demons Run, it's the camera work is all over the place, and like the movement of the story is sort of like some moments are really fast, some moments are. This is all kind of one languid thing. Do you know what I mean? It's like one like slow march to the end, and the whole season has kind of felt that way. And I think it's a cinematic pacing rather than a sort of whiz bang TV show type pacing. And I don't know that so many shows ought to be doing the cinematic pacing.
Well, I think it's a more fundamental problem. I mean, I don't think they've done a good job of resolving plots. I feel like, with this one, this episode revolved around the key point to this episode was, well, obviously you've got the plot with Graham, with him, whether he's going to kill Tim Shaw or not. But once again, we knew he wasn't going to. But but that paid off just because I was emotionally involved with the characters. But the other one is just will the Ucks decide realize Tim Shaw isn't really on their side, and he isn't going to. But they didn't have any plot beats that took you there. It's like it's just the Doctor talking at them till they realize it. It's the same thing as the previous episode. How is the Doctor going to? And is the solo tract going to let her out? It's just her talking at him till it does. I feel like they come up with these endings where they don't have any other solution, and it's.
Yeah, I mean, my feeling, I some of them, I think Doctor Who generally, I think, has not always been that great at least in some of the more recent.
Yeah,
Who,
I know it's
in terms of rapid sort of tying a bow around the ending there, but I think really fundamentally for me, what makes me not want to rush out and rewatch the season is just how slow it was. Do you know what I'm saying? Like there's a slowness to the.
I mean, Moffat would come up with some really stupid endings, but they were excitingly stupid. Even if you were like rolling your eyes and going, "This doesn't make any sense," so like there would be exciting things happening on the screen. Whereas I feel like the boring endings in this season were it's just people talking and okay, we talked it through. Okay, and
it gets into Walking Dead territory. I think it gets into a lot of. What do you call it? Table setting. Do you know what I mean? You kind of get that kind of stuff going on. And I like the season. I think it was a good season. I think they leaned a little too heavily into the cinematic, not Torchwood, Broadchurch style of filmmaking, which we knew we were going to get some of. And I think in a lot of places it worked, especially when they set up the scene of what's going. Like this is the world that we're on. Or this is, that was great. It's just that sometimes the episode just felt too glacial in its movements for me.
I mean, and once again, I think an ending where it's people, talking at each other can actually work really well in Doctor Who. There have been fantastic Doctor Who episodes where that is the case. But when you do that, you have to have really good writing. And I don't feel like any of those talking things out episodes had the writing to pull that off too.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. Though again, I would say the King James episode was certainly. I thought
that was good.
Yeah, that was.
Like I said, I'm talking in generalities. I'm not talking every episode because once again I thought, Demons of the Punjab was also a really good episode. I like that one too. Obviously, it's not as fun as The Witchfinders, which was a very fun episode, but it was a good dramatic episode.
And I think it's really significant, though, that both of the episode we're both kind of honing in on, the distinguishing feature of it is that it's fun. And again, I think Jodie Whittaker, like you were saying, she's been comedic, and that's been adding the element of fun, but it's not filmed like it's fun. Do you know what I mean? It's filmed like a very serious movie. It's sort of like, remember, I'm mentioning it because it came up in our Bohemian Rhapsody discussion, but the Dewey Cox Story movie, the Walk Hard film, that was sort of filmed like just like the kinds of films that it was making fun of. And so it didn't, in that case, it worked, but it also does kind of, it it changes the nature of the experience of watching it. And I think here it's similar where they need to like do, and I don't know, I'm not a filmmaker, so I don't know what it is that's going on, but I can just sense that the levity of Jodie Whittaker's character is not connecting properly with how they're filming her. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. She's kind of working against the show to an extent.
Yeah.
But it's a shame. But yeah, I mean, obviously we've got another season coming in 2020, and I feel like I don't feel like there's anything so wrong with the show that they can't fix it. It's
oh yeah, no, I agree.
But I mean, it's a case where I don't know. I mean, because I don't even know if like I said, I think the writing is really the key issue, because I think the direction could work if the writing was serving the style a little more. But
yeah, I would agree that I think there's been a lot of subpar writing this season, and maybe some of the direction has been better, and it's sort of disguised. But I think that's sort of the core issue, because when I think back to some of my chief complaints, it's sort of like, well, I could have thought of that, or do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
the show just isn't surprising me in a lot of ways, and a lot of the decisions feel really kind of weak.
Yeah,
and so go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I feel in some ways some of the episodes have been too busy. Like I said, they put in too much, and none of it lands.
Yeah,
and it's not any. I don't know. I mean, like, you know, with the crazier Moffat episodes, he could throw something in like every 5 minutes. You'd keep kind of changing the focus, and it would work because everything was exciting. But it's like, you know, with this show, when it does it, you're kind of going from one, you know, like the one on the medical ship. It's you know, that episode, there were like 4 different plots going on, but all of them were just, you know, soap opera. Oh, I'm having a personal issue plot where people stand around and talk, and oh, I'm not getting along well with my sister, or I'm going to have a baby and I'm not ready to be a father. And it's just like, oh. And I mean, you can make those plots mean something, but because it was jumping from one to the other, you didn't get involved in any of them, and they were all very standard plots that played out exactly the way if you were doing the template boilerplate version of that plot.
Yeah. Now, what did you think of the arc that Graham had this episode?
I mean, it was a little unexpected, him, you know, deciding, oh, I'm going to kill this guy, and it was a little abrupt.
Yeah.
But I felt, you know, I felt like the way it developed was actually okay. Like I said, I feel like the show was strongest whenever it was dealing with the main characters.
Yeah.
It's like all the weaker stuff is when they just. I feel like everything that doesn't involve the main characters dealing with each other it feels like it's secondary in this show, but it's put in a primary position. But the writers just don't seem to care about it.
I mean, on the one hand, I like that they have this many companions, because it kind of makes everything feel not so lonely, if that makes sense.
No, I think you can make it work. They just aren't. Yeah. That's all.
But I do think the Graham and Ryan stuff really works, and I think that in this case, I really liked where they went with him. I thought, again, I agree with you. It did come out of nowhere, because it wasn't like I got the sense that he was itching for revenge prior to the beginning of this episode.
Yeah,
it was that he mentioned it to her. So it came out of left field a little bit. But I was like, well, they did kill his wife. You know, I'd probably want to kill him too. I guess
it was reasonable, but it's like there just wasn't any anger in his grief. I mean, up to this point, it's like if they just given him a few plot beats where he and Ryan had a talk, and Graham was, you know, express some anger about it instead of just, you know, more sad kind of grief.
Yeah,
I feel it would have been fine, but.
No, and also his whole thing was he was trying to take Grace with him and do what Grace wanted him to do, and so for him to suddenly give into the revenge impulse was a little odd. But given that that's the choice they made, number one, I was a little bit disappointed with the doctor, and that she was like, "I'm just like never going to even speak to you again."
Yeah, I know.
Like clearly, she's if she can be understanding of Tim Shaw, she can extend a little bit of understanding to Graham, given what happened. So I thought that was a little bit odd, like just a little weird that they did that with her. But I just like the idea of, it does sort of get back to the Doctor's general sort of non-violent, sort of non-revenge oriented character, and I know he's gone off on limbs towards the Daleks and stuff like that in the past, but again, the thing that was always striking to me when I first saw Doctor Who was the fact that he didn't have weaponry. He didn't shoot anything. He was, and so I feel like this sort of gets back at it, and I was a little bit worried for Graham. I was like, oh, maybe this is going to be Graham's last episode. Maybe he is going to kill Tim Shaw, and the Doctor's going to abandon him somewhere.
Yeah, well, it's just, the initial reaction. Oh, well, like you say, the Doctor, whenever the Doctor meets a villain, is like, tries to reason and empathize with every villain, and it's like, oh, one of her family is going to do something wrong. It's like, I'll just never talk to you again. That's it. Sorry.
Yeah. It was cold. There was something cold about that. Like I was thinking, like, would she really do that to him? Like, he's doing it because he's suffering. You know what I mean? It comes from a place of pain, not because Graham is this like hardened killer who just wants to murder something.
And ultimately he wasn't able to do it, so it just makes her look like more of a jerk. It's a thing people say. It's like, oh, I'm going to kill that person, but he didn't have it in him to really do it anyway.
No.
And you can't even really say the Doctor helped him, because, like I say, all she does is just give him this cold shoulder of, go back to the TARDIS. I'm not talking to you anymore.
I will abandon you very rarely gets the result that because in a way it's sort of like, you've already abandoned me once you've said that. Do you know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
Like once she says that to him, then it's like, oh, I guess I must not mean much to you. I think I'll go get my revenge for Grace because I know I meant a lot to Grace. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, that's sort of where I could see his mind being. So yeah, I don't know. Just that exchange between them was a little off. But overall, I liked that part of the story with him ultimately not getting revenge on Tim Shaw. And
well, I feel like Graham and Ryan together are generally always pretty strong when you have them together in scenes, and having it deal a lot with them together worked well. And obviously Ryan is the one that makes the real point, which is, she wouldn't want this, she wouldn't, was the thing that helped. So so to an extent I can understand that, having the Doctor give bad advice so that Ryan can give good advice later, but it felt like, it's something you set up so the plot works, but it's not something you set up so the Doctor's character works.
I can see what you're saying there. And I do like the scene when Ryan tells him that he loves him, and that is the thing that seems to be the final stitch. That worked. I thought that was great for Ryan's character, and I found it like very heartwarming. Like, a lot of times they try to do these things on shows, and it doesn't really pull at your heartstrings in any real way.
Well,
do you know what
that's my point about everything not relating to the main characters. Most of the not in every episode, but in most of the episodes when they've tried to pull at your heartstrings with other characters they've introduced, there's just nothing. I don't feel anything for any of the secondary characters, but with those two characters, I feel like they pulled it off, and
it works because they took their time over the season, kind of having Ryan rebuff Graham's efforts at creating a real relationship between them in the wake of her death.
And it was pretty grounded rebuffing. It's not like, it just was a normal level of distance. Like, look, you're some dude that married my grandmother kind of thing.
Yeah, it wasn't layered with like huge drama or any of that. It was fairly low key. And to me, you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of musical tension that resolves by the end. It just sort of felt like it felt very complete, and I thought it was effective.
But yeah, but I mean, it's interesting because ultimately their thing comes down to Tim Shaw. So it's like, once again, we talk about the episodes being overly busy. Tim Shaw could either be there to resolve the plot between Ryan and Graham in the way he did, or he could have his dramatic resolution with the Ux, but he couldn't have both. And it's like, well, why did you build? You have this huge structural problem in your plot where you're either going to have one person not get, once again, the secondary characters don't get the resolution with the villain that's been taking advantage of them, and it's like, well, I don't know. It just weakened them.
But we only have about 10 minutes left or so, I think. We've been going on for a while. But there is one other topic I want to get into. We don't normally get into this kind of subject, and I don't think me or Adam really particularly find this a thing that we like to really delve into too much on these shows, because we're more into the sort of, did we like it, did we not? But this season has been so... it's the prism through which this season has been discussed online has largely been a political one, I would say. And it's mainly been cast through the lens of, what's going on politically in the United States, and sort of, for lack of better terminology here, like woke culture versus alt-right culture, SJW versus, I don't know what's the opposite of SJW, that kind of thing. And a lot of the criticisms I've seen of the show have been that it's like, it's a social justice Doctor Who. And I don't know, I don't know if you agree with me or not, but my feeling on the political messaging of the show is that it's actually quite subtle this season and very nuanced.
Yeah, I didn't feel it was heavy-handed. I mean, any more than Doctor Who has always had social messages.
Yeah.
I mean, it's this thing where I think people are being so sensitive. It's like, I mean, Doctor Who is always, especially, I mean, with all the series, I mean, it's all, I mean, the older ones, it's not as obvious to a lot of people because it's not a time they lived in, but yeah. I mean, you go back to the Baker era, and there's plenty of
there was a lot of
messages, and I mean,
a lot of like Earth Day type messaging. I remember when we were going to the Baker episodes.
There's those in the '80s. You get clear anti-Thatcher episodes in the '80s, and it's, yeah. I mean, it's a very, very, very political show a lot of the time. So I don't feel it was any heavier than it's ever been.
No, and I would agree. I mean, I think it's about as heavy as the New Who era has been. Do you know what I mean? Because like when you go back to like the Russell T Davies episodes, mm-hmm. those were very, they're very liberal in their point of view. But I think both of us, when we were watching Torchwood, kind of mentioned how it was liberal but like celebratory and sort of libertine. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, and I feel that there's a little bit more of that this season than some of the criticisms that the show has been getting of, being like really far on like the left side of the spectrum, say. I feel like it's really more of a return to Russell T Davies era type liberalism, if that makes sense. Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, the thing that's the problem with a lot of political discourse from either side right now is just all this enormous anger, and there isn't a lot of anger in this season.
No.
I mean, that's the thing. It's. I mean, yeah. If this was, I mean, it's funny because a lot of the complaints that I've been hearing from people about the show are that the villains don't get their comeuppance as much or whatever. It's like, I feel the resolutions were weak, but I don't have a problem with, every villain not getting, capped at the end or anything. And it's like, I feel, a lot of people have been upset that a lot of times the villains turn out not to be villains. They're just misunderstood. Like the spiders were just, they're just big spiders, and yeah, it's not there isn't that anger that you get in a lot of political discourse now. So I don't feel like there is a very now agenda from either angle on it right now.
No, what I got was it's anti-revenge, anti-political violence, Just sort of like the stuff that Doctor Who's kind of always been about. And I don't think that really connects with either of the extremes that are, present in the political discussion these days. So I really just didn't see it. I didn't see the critique. And when you go to the episode that I think, again, the big thing about this season, it's the female Doctor. And I think a lot of people are like, ooh, it's going to be, super feminist Doctor Who. But that episode was pretty well crafted, and it wasn't like
Which episode are we talking about?
Oh, the Witchfinder episode.
Witchfinder, okay.
That episode was a fairly, number one, it was one of the lightest episodes of the season.
Yeah.
But it also I thought that was one of the most nuanced episodes in terms of the political messaging, because it was kind of a cautionary note of of how the pursuit of justice can get out of hand. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
exactly.
And so I just didn't see. I don't see a lot of the things that people are critiquing. I think there's maybe some lip service being paid to some things that people might be expecting, but I think if you just scratch a little bit on what's going on, you get at times a fairly sophisticated take on some of these things. So I wasn't. And the thing is, I have friends that are conservative. I have friends that are liberal, and I've talked to a lot of them about this. And most of the sane people I know in the real world, not people online, but like people I know in real world, like you and some of my other friends, they all kind of agree with me on that. Like regardless of whether they're conservative or liberal or whatever. So I think a lot of people these days are watching this season with the present in mind, and it's kind of influencing what they're seeing on the screen, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I it's a lot of times too. I mean, things. I don't know what the political situation exactly is like in Britain anyway. A lot of times Americans put things onto Doctor Who that isn't really there. Like the one about the moon being an egg episode, which people hated for a lot of reasons, but a lot of Americans complained about how it was some anti-abortion message. And it's like, but the thing is, the whole thing about anti-abortion messages is that's a big thing in America, but in Europe and Britain and Australia, it's not even a controversial topic. Yeah. They weren't putting that message because it didn't even occur to them. I feel like a lot of times messages just kind of get imposed that aren't even intended because people want to see a message there.
No, and that's kind of what I'm saying in the very long roundabout way is that. And again, and I didn't know about that. That's interesting to me because I know about that episode. I know about all the other criticisms. I never knew.
There's a lot of criticisms about that one.
But that's a new one.
Lost in the mix.
That seems like a weird thing to linger on with that episode. I mean, of all the things to complain about, that would have been the bottom of my list of potential issues.
Never crossed my mind once watching it. Then I went online and I'm like, oh.
That's like when people take and I think that's what I'm saying. People are taking these very specific like ciphers and like they're seeing it's like they're really,
looking for their dog whistles.
Yeah, well, it's like you really are seeing something that you will only see if you're taking that lens to find it. Do you know what I mean? It's like if you're and like when I think of like the really political episodes this season, they were all pretty, I don't know.
They were pretty moderate. I mean, they were the kind of things you on 70s TV would like for the most part. I mean, obviously,
I would agree with that.
It's like that the Rosa episode, for example. That that could have been an episode of Quantum Leap.
Oh no, exactly. That's exactly what it could have been. And I think and even the Trump episode was like comedic. It wasn't at all. Do you know what I'm saying? Like the Trump episode,
it was very broad.
Yeah, it was very, and again, that might get into what you were saying about people in the UK don't have the same level of investment in that particular issue that an American might, but
yeah.
Or maybe the thing that is most striking to them is just sort of the humor of it. I don't know. but but
Yeah.
but yeah, I just didn't get the vibe that there was a new political edge to the show that it didn't have before watching it, or that it was or that the politics had somehow changed to a new set of politics. I saw a series that was pushing kind of back against both sides a little bit. It was still pretty liberal, like the show's always been, but I felt like it was kind of pushing against extremes in general.
Yeah, it's not an extreme show. I mean, that's the thing. There isn't any extreme agenda. I mean, is it a liberal show? Yeah, it's a liberal show. It's always been a liberal show.
No,
but it's
and that's
not.
the thing.
It's not extreme, in your face liberalism. It's just the same.
Well, I don't know. I mean, again, Torchwood got pretty in your face, but it was celebratory. It was celebratory, and it was like that's what the series has always kind of had, those sort of things in it.
When I say in your face, I mean yelling in your face is what I should say.
Yeah, I know what you mean. No. Jack Harkness kisses you on the lips. He doesn't yell at you to your face. It's that kind of a thing. But I like the celebratory nature of the Russell T Davies Who and Torchwood and I like the sort of style of Moffat and this felt like it's, again, I think the biggest departure that the series takes isn't political. It isn't like content. It's just the way it's shot. That's really the biggest difference this season has from the other ones, I think, is that it's the way it's shot and the pacing.
I do feel the writing needs work. I just feel like, because like I said, Doctor Who episodes don't need to make sense, but there just needs to be a certain element of playfulness to the writing that this season only got in patches.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think but we've had bad writing before in Doctor Who. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know, but it's a lot of the episodes though, and a lot of the new series, I feel there's a fair amount of it's had bad writing in the whole way the episode was resolved itself, but a lot of there's most episodes of the new series are generally pretty fun in the moment, and I feel like this episode wasn't always fun in the moment. You had there were a number of scenes in a lot of these episodes where you kind of have these dead air kind of scenes in there.
Well, you know what it is? You can easily miss the humor in this series because if you're not paying attention, you don't realize that you're supposed to be laughing. Do you know what I mean? And maybe that's a weakness of me as a viewer, but I feel like in the previous versions of Doctor Who, I knew when I was supposed to be laughing. The show made it abundantly clear, and it kind of helps. Do you know what I mean? It helps add to the humor. But if it's like this dour landscape and music and stuff is going on, and somebody's telling jokes, it just doesn't. It's sort of like we were saying. Like, it feels like she's kind of fighting against the way the series was shot. Which isn't to say that we're all complaints. I thought it was a decent season, and I think the season did what it had to do. It established the showrunner and the star are solid, and that we can I think that, like you said, next season will hopefully be better. And it wasn't a bad season at all. I thought I enjoyed a lot of the episodes. I think what both of us were missing were those real standout episodes that wowed us. That was for me. That's what was missing. I got it with the Witchfinders, and that was so good to me that it kind of redeemed the whole season.
It just felt like a lot of the season was too subdued. They weren't willing to be. I mean, it's funny, we're critical of the frog thing, but it's like it almost could have used more times if they went for something that weird. Sometimes they fall flat, sometimes they don't. But if they'd gone for the fences like that more often, I feel like you would have had the times like the frog where it didn't work, but having some moments like that did turn out to work would have been better.
I will say this for the frog. It held my attention. Do you know what I mean? It definitely captivated my interest. And I was puzzled, but I was paying attention to what was going on, and I I was sort of engaged with what they were presenting to me. So I think
Sure.
I think you might be right about that. As much as I don't like that frog, I think a willingness to go there, because you could have argued that about the Witchfinders episode. That could have easily been, what the hell is going on with King James? Why is he acting like Pee Wee Herman? Like, what is, you know what I mean? Like, it could have been just a little too much humor. But it worked.
Well,
it worked,
it did.
And so sometimes maybe, I could see that with the frog, like on paper. That's actually what I was thinking when it was happening. I was like, when the person was writing this, I can almost imagine what they must have been thinking. And then, it's like they must have thought it was brilliant. You know what I mean? Like they must have, and it just didn't translate visually, because you actually have to show the frog, and that was the problem. But we should get going because it's been like over an hour, and I do want to eat tonight. But we got through the season, and we're gonna have a discussion about what we should do next. Hopefully, we'll have either a movie to cleanse the palate, or we'll find another show. I'd kind of like to do something like Babylon 5 again, because that was I think that was like our best discussion series, going through Babylon 5.
That's a meaty series to talk about, definitely.
So I don't know, is there a series that rivals Babylon 5 that's as easily digestible as Babylon 5?
Oh, we can talk about it after the podcast.
All right.
I don't want to throw anything out, then us not do it.
I do that all the time, though. I tell people we're going to do this movie or this game I'm going to release.
Yeah, you do it, but I don't.
But anyways, so we're going to get going, and we'll be back on. I think me and Joel are going to be doing a movie called Duel to the Death. I think we're going to be doing it this week. And then after that, me, Joel, and Adam will be doing a Chinese ghost story, which should be interesting. I'm really looking forward to that discussion. And next week, I believe we're doing the Supreme Swordsman for Wuxia Weekend. And so, again, we have a Patreon. Check it out, support us. And again, thanks for listening. We really appreciate it. We like doing these Doctor Who episodes. So, and again, we'll talk to you later.